All right, you guys. So I'm gonna break down this trade from today. Trying to go to the signal. Trying to go to the signal. All right, so this is the one from today. All right. So starting off for the week, right? Monday. We hit a pretty big buy. So let's go to the 15 minute because this is the 1 hour. Oh wait, but before we go to the 15, let me just talk about the 1 hour, right? So a lot of people have a preference on what time frame to use, and that's perfectly fine, right? Because it all depends on you, um, how many hours you've spent in the market, your personality, your psyche, your risk tolerance. It depends on a number of things, right? So that's fine to have a preference. But when you see something on any time frame and it matches up to your cues or to your triggers that make you enter the market, right? On a given signal, you have to pay attention. So right here we have on the 1 hour, we have pretty much price came down here, right? Respected this zone, which is a pretty strong zone, respected the zone, right? Brought up, right? We see right here, we kind of had a little bit of resistance, right? But once price broke above this resistance, it was pretty much telling us that it was going to go to the upside. Now, if I would have seen this on the 15 minute, I would have gotten in right here, right? But since it wasn't forming like that on the 15 minute, I didn't get in right here. But that's 22,960. That's a difference of 700, almost 800 pips, right? So just things like that, right, can make a big difference. Now, obviously today it didn't affect us today because we had, so much momentum, so much volume in the market that when we got in right here, which is also, I didn't just get in the trade to get in. It, has to break a point or it has to, show me. So, and that's what it did right here, right before it got to the zone. Um, so yeah, but that's a huge difference, right? 800 pips from there. That's a huge difference. Now today that didn't really matter because the trade almost went 2000 pips, right? But let's say if it's a day where volume is not pumping like that, that could be a huge difference, right? So even though you may have wins, you always have to adjust those wins or you have to take notes and you have to have constructive criticism on those wins because every win can be better, right? Just like every loss can be either smaller or mitigated, right? So you have to look at trading like that. Like, what can I do better? What can I self-improve on, right? No matter if you win, lose, or draw, you always have to learn something from whatever you're doing, right? And most times you learn more when you lose. Hate to say it, but you do. Wins, you can close early, this, that, and the third. You're not really learning too much because you made money. Your strategy, your edge, it hit, it worked. So you don't have too much to self-evaluate, right? Unless, you've been in the market for a while and you kind of do what I did, and I say I could have got in right there, instead of here and things of that nature. And also, where I exited the market, right? I could have exited later. Just things like that, right? So you always have to try to be better the next time because the market conditions are always going to change, right? You're always going to get opportunities, but you have to be able to learn from your previous ones so you can max out on the new ones that present themselves. So today was a buy, like I said before. I'm gonna get into the 15, but I had to show you guys that on the 1 hour, because that is the that is the candle formation I wanted to see on the 15 minute. But instead, and we also had price rejecting right here, um, but it just wasn't like if I would have seen that on the 15 minute, it would have been an entry, right? That would have been an A1 setup if I would have saw that kind of formation on the 15 minute. But I saw it on the 1 hour, so right. So you have price pretty much buying up, right? And it's establishing these areas of support and resistance, right? And it's respecting it. So when price brought up right here, we have right there, that's the 915 candle, this small one right here. This huge one is the 930 candle, that's the session opening. So like I said, I would have got in right there if I would have saw that kind of formation forming on the 15 minute, right? But we still have an entry point, right? Which is pretty much this higher low, um, right here, or lower high, I should say. My fault. Did we have this lower high right here, that was formed last week? So I know that once price breaks that and we have enough momentum or enough volume, that price is going to continue to the upside, right? Now we did have liquidity to the downside. Now we did have liquidity to the downside. So don't be surprised if, even with this good buy on a Monday, right, that we end the week lower than we currently have opened, right? Don't be surprised if we have a little bit of last week. Not saying I'm expecting a sell-off, but I'm just saying don't be surprised because there is still liquidity to the downside and it is very fresh. And then there's more liquidity further down, right? So it would make sense, right? It would make sense for that to happen. But like I said before, you don't predict the market, you have to react. You have to react. So yeah, so the formation that formed on the 15th, or the 1 hour with these candles, that's what I would have liked to see on the 15th with these kind of candles with that rejection, that strong buying candle, and then another buying candle that broke the previous area. That is what I wanted to see on the 15, and it's not what I saw. So that's why it was an 800 pip delay on the signal, right? Which still went for almost 2,000 pips, right? Sent that out at 9:36. Hit the first TP in 9 minutes, right? 450 pips. Then it went on, right? 650. Then right there, right? So in under 30 minutes, we have 1,000 pips, right? And that's one of the benefits of trading futures, right? They move pretty aggressive. And then you see down here, we took a little bit longer in the day, as you can see right there, right? Yeah, and then it just continued to go up. So, I mean, that's pretty much that on that. I feel like depending on your style, right? Because trading is already difficult and not so much as the learning aspect, but the managing your emotions, right? With the wins and the losses, right? Trying to make the wins as good as possible and trying to end the losses as soon as possible. That's the thing that most people battle with when they're trading, right? So this was a clean setup today. This was a clean setup, right? Now I could have got in my head and I could have said, it's liquidity to the downside. So if it buys up fast, don't do it because it could be what? A liquidity grab. But like I said before, all of those thoughts, they're just that. They're just thoughts, right? You don't know what the market is going to do. You just have to react. Just because I say it's liquidity down here and I say it would make sense for it to sell off does not mean price is going to sell off. If price is showing you it's buying up, right? If it's showing you that it's making these levels of support, it's making these points, right? It's showing you these wicks on these candles, right? These areas of rejection, right? It's showing you it's maintaining, right? What seems to be a zone that is respecting, right? You can't go against what you're seeing. So if price is showing you that it's buying up, you have to just be prepared to look for an entry for that buy to get in that trade. You can't just say, I'm not gonna buy it up because it could be X, Y, and Z, because you don't know at the end of the day. You have to be okay with winning and losing, right? And a lot of times most people aren't okay with that, and that's why they kind of leave technical analysis on the table and they go so more with I thought or I want it, right? They trade with feelings, and feelings and money do not mix. So, like I said before, I could have thought like that and not got in this trade today. Um, you know, that's the only way you lose trades, right? You psych yourself out, right? Because if you look at the setup, you look at what's going on here, right? You look at what price is showing you, it looks like a smooth trade. But, prior to all of this, right? Prior to all of this happening, right? You just have from this candle on over to the left, right? So you don't know what's going to happen. So even though you see what it's telling you, right? Emotions may make you, trade differently. That's why you have to try to take your emotions out of you. You have to try to have a game plan. If you see my signal, I have what? That it's either gonna buy or sell, right? So if it would have broke this point right here or these levels right here, I would have gotten in a sell, right? And you can see right there, right? Then I also had if it breaks right there, which obviously it did, that we're gonna get in a buy, and that's what happened, right? You have to have You have to have a game plan before entering the market because that's the only way you can take your emotions out of it. So I hope this call helped you guys. I know it was pretty brief and it wasn't really a lot on this call, and that's really a lot of trades, right? I mean, you have to have time on the chart. Now I can take you back and, show you, what it did last week, the week before, where we're at in the market, things like that. But that wouldn't be really a trade breakdown. That would be really me just, explaining the charts to you guys. And I don't want to make these calls into that, right? I can do some of those calls, but I don't want to make these calls into that. I just want to do trade reviews. So if, sometimes it's not going to be too much to talk about on some of these trades because it's going to be pretty clean, right? We had price. It came down last week. Massive sell off the end of the week with Thursday and Friday selling off almost 10,000 pips, right? And what we always say in the market, you never want to catch a falling knife, right? So this week, what do we do, right? I say you never want to try to catch a falling knife. That means when it's selling off, you don't look for it to buy unless it's doing what? Breaking a major point or a major zone. And what did it do today? It broke a major point and a major zone, right? It did two of the things we look for, right? Down here, didn't do any of that. So if somebody would have tried to get in either one of these, right, which was last week, was a sell, which we sold it. But if they would have tried to, get in that for a buy, they would have lost, right? Because you never want to catch a falling knife. You want to wait for it to set up and then break a point, break an area in the market that's significant, that means something, right? That's going to signal it going back to the upside. And that's what it did. So, I could talk about all of that, and add it into the trade. But, sometimes it's just gonna be, just sitting on your hands and just waiting for that move to come, right? That's what it's gonna be sometime. It's not gonna be so much of it was in between this zone, it was in between that zone. It hit the supply zone. It had liquidity marked up at, 23.5. It's not gonna it's not gonna be too much of that right now. I will say liquidity does let you know where price is going in the market, right? That's a good thing to notice, right? You want to be able to identify liquidity in the market because that gives you kind of a target. Now we had liquidity up here, right? Liquidity was up here. So you have to have an eye for liquidity because you can see where price is going. And that also allows you to hold and maximize these trades or these wins, right? Because if you see liquidity at, let's say, 23,211, right? 23,211.7, right? Liquidity, right? You're going to say, well, I'm going to wait until price gets there and then I'm going to close, right? That is a big difference, right? That is a big difference. That's going to cover, that's possibly a 4 to 1, right? That's possibly a 4 to 1, right? Just by you waiting. Now, if you don't know where liquidity is and you're kind of nervous, you may end up getting out around here, right? Which is still good. That's what, 23,0895, uh, about 550. So that's 550 pips, which is pretty good, right? That's pretty good. But 550 and 1200, two different things, right? You're going to get more bang for your buck when you can identify more things in the market to help you with trading. And just because I explained these trades, that's why you guys have to go back and look at some of these videos on my channel, right? So you can tie them into me talking about these trade breakdowns. So you can kind of understand and get a glimpse into things a little better because you have to be able to put two and two together. I might just get on this call like I did today and say, we have these points of resistance being formed. We have these new um, higher lows, right, being formed. Um, we have the lower high or higher low, my fault, higher low being formed, right, and breaking it, and then we can enter, right? So you have to, be able to tie some of those things in time frame confluency. Like I said, the 1 hour, right? I should have got in right there, time frame confluency, right? It matches up with the smaller time frame. But it was the clearest today on the 1 hour. Um, and just things like that. And even right here, right? This looks way clearer than the 15, right? Which it pretty much breaks this and it enters this zone and it's going down. It looks a lot clearer on the 1 hour, right? Now I typically get it on the 15, but just like I said before, you can't be biased to just one time frame, right? But that's pretty much it for this call. I hope I was not rambling. Hope you guys actually took something from this call. And I'm gonna drop a few more. I'm gonna try to drop some more consistently to end the year out. Just try to give you guys value. If it's not value, let me know. If I'm rambling, let me know. Give me feedback in the comments, and I'll go back and I'll change that. I just want to try to help as many people as possible. That's not even in my group, right? Just in general, just following me along my journey. Help you guys along your journey because you never know. You could get on here one day and see something, and it clicks for your strategy, or it clicks for you, or it makes you put more time and dedication into your craft, and it could take you even further or at a faster rate. So that's pretty much the goal, reach one, teach one. But that's pretty much it for this call. Like I said, good trade today, almost 2,000 pips, good trade. Really what we want to see in Q3 with these movements, right? With last week, Thursday and Friday, then with today, with Monday, great volume in the market. So yeah, man. Y'all just tap in, keep going, keep going, keep going. Keep stacking on wins, keep stacking on wins, right? Doesn't matter if they're little, right? Medium, does not matter. Stack them in, build your confidence, perfect your craft, keep going, don't give up, right? Everyone has a chance to do this. This is not something that only a few people can do, right? It's just something that a few people continue to do, right? So see you guys at the top because the bottom is not an option.